Hello, I want to talk to you about 30 amazing or fascinating things on one of the best walks of my life, from Weymouth to Mupe Bay and back. Now, this walk was the 27th of February 2021. Quick run through as to what makes the walk particularly memorable, amazing, fascinating, and so on. A very strong undergirding factor in the enjoyment of this walk was the mental health benefits from it. The walk came during lockdown, and I had been walking everywhere, seriously everywhere, to help keep my parents safe, who I was staying with during lockdown. And there was a sense of confinement, of not being able to go very far, and this was by far the biggest walk I did during lockdown. Typically, I'd only ever visited where I was going using car or public transport, maybe bicycle when I was a kid. But so this was something epic that I had planned and gave a great sense of release from confinement. It was also helping deal with trauma, the trauma of being separated from my kids, the trauma of being away from my home, and the prime trauma of having been assaulted at home in November 2020, which caused me to have nearly 6 months away from home. An unmistakable factor is the location and the sense of natural spectacle for the walk. It's on Dorset's Jurassic Coast, Weymouth to Mupe Bay. So many beautiful, stunning, memorable views, aspects of the coastline, just to bathe in awe and wonder. Another wow aspect was the weather. It was a clear forecast approaching a full moon and a sunny day. It seems to be very rare we actually in the UK get a completely clear night all the way through on a full moon, and then a beautiful dawn till dusk sunny day. And so as I saw the full moon date approaching and the weather forecast looking clear, I thought I've got a once, probably in a lifetime chance here to do a before dawn to after dusk walk. There are the surprises of the walk, the motivating destination for the walk was the fossil forest just east of Lulworth Cove. All my life I'd been aware of the fossil forest, heard it talked about, seen on a map, but had never gone that little bit further from the eastern tip of Lulworth Cove along down the steps to see the fossil forest. While I was researching the walk to the fossil forest, I became aware of Mupe Bay, Mupe Rocks, Mupe Ledges. For some reason, they'd escaped my attention. All my life, I grew up in the area, but I didn't recognise the views when I saw them. But obviously, I saw the fields behind them, and so I knew this had to be the Purbeck coastline, the Jurassic Coast. And so it was necessary to include a further extension east from the fossil forest to take in more of the location. The surprise of the natural spectacle of Mupe Bay was stunning. It's become one of my favourite places. I often think of myself being there and have had the chance to go back a couple times. There was also the feeling of achieving the long desired goal, a decent walk to a place that I'd thought about, and the reward for doing that, as well as just getting up early long before sunrise. I love my sleep, and I resent getting up very, very early, but when you get a payoff like an amazing day, one you'll never forget, well, it's just blindingly obvious it's worth it. And finally, the other thing that made it worth it was the solitude. Having been confined for several weeks and no apparent easing to the lockdown restrictions, it was very, very difficult. So being alone in nature, walking on beautiful sunshiny day, and due to the lockdown the route was very quiet. It is a beautiful route, a beautiful place which draws in many tourists during the peak season, and indeed after one of the lockdowns eased, the beach at Durdle Door was packed. People travelled quite considerable distances to go enjoy that piece of coastline. But because it was locked down, I had it almost entirely to myself. I was doing it on foot. As I was coming down the hill towards Lulworth, there was a police car monitoring the car park there to make sure that people weren't pulling up, having travelled long distances to go and enjoy one of the South Coast's most beautiful areas during a lockdown and meant to be staying close to home. Right, so I better get on with it. What are the 30 amazing, all fascinating things on one of the best walks of my life? From Weymouth to Mupe Bay along the Jurassic Coast. Number 1, heading east from Weymouth. The moonlit fields and the night vibes, just stunning. I love being out at night time. It sharpens my senses. It is rare I actually feel spooked by the dark. I just get kind of more of a buzz of, wow, I'm enjoying this. It's less sensory input, and the senses that are operating get sharpened. So hearing, smell, sight all become so much more keen, and it becomes just stunning. Love the mood, love the vibes of it. Number 2, the night birds. A number of different dips and dells and glens along the coast. As I went through one of them, I could hear the night calls of the owls going tweet, choo. Let's have a listen. Number 3, on a related note to the night birds, the dawn chorus. The birds awakening, singing, greeting the new day. Just stunning. Never ever tired of the audio spectacle of the dawn chorus. Let's have another listen. Number 4, the moonset. As I headed east and glimpsed behind me to the west, obviously the moon was lowering, glistening on the sea, and eventually setting along the hills to the very, very far west behind me. There's something about observing the sun or the moon set, rise. Number 5, heading uphill, having departed Osmington Mills. There is a radar station. I had a brief peep in on that, but I needed to return for a closer look sometime. Number 6, the dawn. Oh my, I hadn't got up high enough to see the dawn completely break looking east, but the dawn I got was so special, so precious. The light, yeah, real. Along the coast from Osmington past Osmington Mills, you get a number of vibey dips and dells, glens. They remind me of the Manx Glens, and each has its own kind of character and vibe going on. But it's really worth just slowing down a little as you go through those, especially if you've not been there before. Just have a feel. Number 9, St Catherine's Chapel. Don't confuse us with the one at Abbotsbury. This is a smaller St Catherine's Chapel, mainly of wood. You can have a peeping through the windows, sit around the back. I had my breakfast around the back because I'd been walking for a couple of hours by that point and was beginning to need some sustenance. Number 10, the sunrise. Yes, no sunrise ever fails to disappoint. I hadn't got high enough to see the sun come up over the horizon, but I did get the sun fairly low in the sky, but the view of it was just stunning, which brings me to number 11, White Nose. I assume it must be the remains of another radar station or an observation point high up on one of the highest points of the Dorset coast for a long way. But looking east from there, the shadows, the light, the rays, the glow, the grandeur of the coast, the sparkle on the sea. Looking west and south, the sea was so blue, just overwhelmingly blissful, ecstasy. Just amazing. Number 12, the Jurassic Coast views as you look east. Seeing the sequences of hills, of features along the coast as you look east, just as far as you can see, is just spectacle. Kind of reminiscent on a much smaller scale, but still natural spectacle of the Grand Canyon, where when you go and look over the canyon edge for the first time, as far as you can see, is just natural grandeur and spectacle. Number 13, two huge navigational obelisks on the coastline. Interestingly, they don't appear to be marked on the Ordnance Survey map, but having researched after the war, they are navigational features. Would obviously make sense, being clearly visible from a long way off, especially from the sea. Number 14, the eroded pathways going up and down. The obvious thoroughfare of thousands of feet, shoes, walking boots over many, many years of animals when they had access close to the cliff edge. Just always such a contemplative activity, thinking on the people who've been over that route over the years. Number 15, the ups and the downs. It added considerably to the amount of stair flights which my phone recorded me going up and down, and also to the effort of the day. By the time I was needing to turn back later on in the day, I had thought I can't possibly return the same route, exactly the same route as I came, because the amount of ups and downs would just be too much for me. It was considerable effort, and also the ups and downs do take you really close to the cliff edge, and you think, well, what if a bit of the cliff gave away now, or I slipped and couldn't stop? It is a very, very long way down in places. But the ups and downs, fascinating. I'm glad I did them. May do them again someday. Number 16, the coastal features. Bat's Head, Durdle Door, the breakwater at Freshwater Bay. One of the things that few people seem to notice, especially if you can have a boat trip from the other side of Durdle Door, or just see Durdle Door in profile, is that it appears to be a big dragon drinking from the sea. Have a look. Number 17, the ancient field systems. Yes, what might be described as Celtic field systems by some. You can see the earthworks, especially when the light is oblique at a low angle, causing a shadow on what subtle earthworks there are. You can see the old field markings showing that people have been working the landscape for agriculture for well over 2,000 years and designating land for particular usage. Number 18, one of those dips is called Scratchy Bottom. Yes, really. Always worth a quartal or two. Yes, I've been to Scratchy Bottom. Number 19, having gone up over hill looking down towards Lulworth Cove and the car parks down there, you will see the hill in front of you. Look carefully and you will notice that there are earthworks that go around the perimeter of the hill. That is Bindon Hill Iron Age Hill Fort. I did return for a walk to Bindon Hill and Mupe Bay on the day which Prince Philip died upon. In fact, it was as I got to the top of Bindon Hill and my phone regained a signal that I got the news of Prince Philip's death. Number 20, Lulworth Cove. It was lunchtime, so I ate my lunch in a very quiet Lulworth Cove. Really, really lovely. I parked myself near one of the much lower cliff sides. Don't sit underneath the cliffs anywhere on the Dorset coast, because bits could come down on you at any time. You don't know when or where. So I sat somewhere low with my face towards the sun and put my feet out to rest and enjoy the quietness and my food and drink. Number 21, having picked my way up through the rather ruined steps, I headed around to Pepler Point and enjoyed the views across the cove, up to Bindon Hill, across to Portland. Number 22, the original furthest eastern extremity of my walk, the fossil forest. Pay attention to any MOD signs, and if you are planning a walk here or to Mupe Bay, look up for the MOD ranges on the internet or in local publications in Dorset, and you will be able to see when the scheduled firing times would be for the rangers. The original focus for this walk was the fossil forest. I spent quite a considerable amount of time there enjoying the big fossilized mudcast which formed around trees millions and millions and millions of years ago. The fossil forest sits on a south-facing ledge, and for the end of February, the sunshine there was just so warm, it made it really worthwhile spending time. Not many people actually seem to spend a lot of time there. There were a few folk came down and had a look. I outlasted them all by some way. So if you do want it to yourself, just spend a little bit of time loitering with intent. A radar station, yes, another radar station. By this time the light was up and very strong. The rippled appearance of the concrete with the light made monochrome photography and filtering very, very desirable, and I did have to spend a little while having a play with my camera and the filters on it at this location. Not much further on from there, we get to number 24, Mupe, M-U-P-E, the Mupe Bay, the Mupe Rocks, the Mupe Ledges. It's such an awe-inspiring view. When you look at those rocks and you connect that they would have extended eastwards, joining up the coastline, you begin to appreciate the sheer scale and age of the landscape. It makes for such contemplative marvel, makes you, on one hand, very small and insignificant, because you realise that our life against the age of that landscape is just so small and fleeting. But there you are, you're in it, feeling it, appreciating that age. If you have a little bit longer at Mupe and the tides are right, you can go to number 25, the Smugglers Cave. Yes, at the western extremity of Mupe, there is a little cave, but you have to pick your way over very, very difficult rocks and ledges, which, if the tide is up, will be lapping around and splashing, or maybe even washing you out to sea. So pick your time for visiting. So number 25 was the Smugglers Cave. I returned there on another visit the same day that Prince Philip died, for a very, very early morning walk, and it was magnificent. I've had my wallpaper on my phone, me sat with that view for quite some time, looking out. Really special. Number 26, Flowers Barrow. Look across the bay eastwards and you'll see that there is a large kind of scree slope of some of the hill eroding downwards. That is the erosion into another Iron Age hill fort, Flowers Barrow. Had the chance to go and visit there quite some time ago, maybe a couple of decades now. The hill fort is indeed eroding down the cliff. I guess there must be the occasional bit of interesting archaeology exposed. There you have another human part of the prehistoric landscape there in front of you. Still a tiny fraction of the natural landscape which you can see from there. Number 27, Barrow Bay, which will be facing you across from Mupe. By this point, I was definitely needing to start heading back. So picking a slightly different route, I headed back to Lulworth Cove, and instead of going back up over the hill, over towards Durdle Door. I picked my way around and then up through one of the caravan parks on the public footpaths, and then picked a line which went more or less flat across the fields above the big dips and bottoms of the coastline, and helped spare me another probably over another 100 floors worth of steps. And number 28, coming back this way, you pass a number of fossils, inset little housings, which adds to a sense of amazing fascination. Again, these things were living creatures millions of years ago, and now we have the casts of their shells and bodies as indicators that they were here. Number 29, the nature, frogs, flowers, snails. Again, all these little things just make you go, wow. Well, they do me anyway. And finally, having gotten over White Nose, looking back westwards to the westering sun, it was the parked up cruise liners waiting the end of lockdown restrictions, moored up somewhere safe for however long need be. Sunsets never disappoint me, and this was no exception. And at this point, I was nearing the end of my walk for this day. My dad was picking me up at Osmington Mills, spare me the last hour or so walking across the fields back to Weymouth, and I was just absolutely full of gratitude for such an amazing day. Pleased with myself, I'd made the effort to be up and out walking by 4:30 a.m. until after sunset. Absolute joy of a day. Now, I was walking on pegs for much of the rest of the week because my legs and muscles really needed a rest, but it left me with the glow of a day that I will never forget, but I'll always be thankful for. A perfect day, and I'm so glad I spent it with me. I really am.